What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another unscripted video. Today we're going to be upgrading this sleeper PC I made a couple videos back, and we're just going to be adding better components, better parts, just a general upgrade. Now I have most of the components already. I'm only really waiting on the power supply, and that should be coming here in a couple hours. But before I do that, I just wanted to show off the insides. It's mostly gutted, but I haven't added the motherboard, so here's the empty aesthetic for you. Now, if I put the front cover on, let me show you what that looks like real quick. And I'm just going to add a little bit of light here so you can see the fans a little bit better. But these two fans, as well as this USB hub type thing, these are all glued together so that they'll fit. And I kind of got lucky with the whole size because it fits into the chassis like just perfectly when you add this little hub. So I will probably just zip tie them down because I don't have like screw holes anywhere where they're supposed to be. Like you can see that there's screw holes on the front of these fans, but not on the sides. So I'm probably just gonna route like zip ties in the back screw holes and just hold them down to the case like that, since I don't really have that many other options and I don't really want to glue it in. Before I forget, this little piece in the middle came from the Inspiron over here. It was just a little hub on the front. If I can get this to come open, this is actually kind of stuck. But yeah, it went in where this little slot is right here, and it came with a little metal housing. But unfortunately, it would not fit with the metal housing very well, so I had to take it off. The idea for this little assembly is that they'll come out just about as far as the SD card reader and floppy disk reader when the front panel is not on. I actually sourced these two fans from this old 32-bit, surprisingly, micro ATX. One of the smaller ATX form factors for a PC. It still has the nice little DVD drive. But the fans came from this location here and that location there. And the wiring situation on the back is a bit of a mess right now. We've got the two fans wired together, and I haven't added any extra wiring on yet because I'm waiting for the power supply. But once that comes in, we'll be able to put the whole thing together. The little cutout right here, because we have like a bit of a hole, I didn't really want that to show. So on the front panel, you can see I did like a little bit of casework, if I can get it to focus. There we go. And yeah, that's just electrical tape. But I took one of these covers up here, and I just kind of cut away at it, and then I ground it down so that it was smoother, and then I just put the tape around it because I didn't really feel like spray painting it. In the back here, you can see the two cables from that little USB hub. The green one is for the USB ports, and then the yellow one is for the audio. The other cables in the back we have here are for the speaker and then the SD card reader. And there is another one that's going to be in the back for the DVD drive. Figured I'd show you guys the motherboard before I throw it into the case. This is the MSI Pro H610M-G, and it uses DDR4 memory. Unfortunately, it only comes with 2 slots, but for me that's okay because I got plenty of RAM. And it will be running in dual channel because I have 2 sticks of it. So, moving on, here's the I/O. And then it does support 12th and 13th gen Intel CPUs. Unfortunately, I can't overclock the memory, so it is kind of stuck at the current frequency, but it's alright because I'm not planning on doing anything super intense on this build. It is kind of a budget build after all. The motherboard and I/O shield are now in place. Next, I'll move on to the CPU and cooler, but I just gotta say, for a motherboard that didn't come out too long ago, the fact that it fits into an ancient case is just surprising to me. Just for perspective, here is the original motherboard that went into this case. Insane. For this build, I'm going to be using the Core i3-12100F. And just like that, the CPU and cooler are in. Next, I'm going to move on to the graphics card, and for this budget build, I have a GTX 1060 from NVIDIA. Before I was able to insert the graphics card, I had to move the HDD out because it wouldn't allow for me to put anything in the PCIe slot. So Because of that, I had to flip it upside down in order for the pins to be able to connect to the cables, because if it goes in upside down, it just completely is blocked by the graphics card. And if I have any chance of keeping it in this orientation, it has to stick out like this far, otherwise the cable will be blocked by the graphics card and there's just not enough space. So that's the situation. Next up is the USB 3.0 PCIe card. It's not going to get a whole lot of use since it's in the back, but at least it'll cover up this hole. Next is the RAM. Not super exciting, but still a very important part of the PC. Now that the RAM is properly seated, we can move on to the fun part of the video, where I wire all of these case fans together. Unfortunately, I only have one other fan connector right here, and my power supply doesn't allow for me to connect any more directly to it. MSI thought it was a better idea to focus more heavily on RGB lighting than system temperatures, so thanks MSI! I mean, seriously though, just take a look for yourself. We have one RGB port here, two down here, this one, and then this one, and then another one over here. And I only have one USB connector, which is kind of sad. Now it's time to wire everything together. Man, that was exhausting, but all of the fans are finally wired together. It's a little hard to see, but they all go to this port right down here underneath this cable. I'm not going to move it a whole lot, but you can see the little white connector down there. And the power cable management is not the greatest. Some stuff is zip tied together, but it does all work. It's been tested. But before we put the lid on the side of the case, I'm just going to show you the front real quick. Personally, I do, for the most part, like how the front turned out. It is a little bit clustered and the fans are visible, but this PC is still able to maintain that old sleeper look. Let me just go ahead and take you through the little cluster we have here. The top is the DVD drive, and it is completely functional. I had enough SATA ports for it to work, and I actually had to use it to install the BIOS for the motherboard. Down here, we got the fans, of course, USB and audio, all functional. These are 2.0, unfortunately, but it's just because it's what I had. Then down here we have the SD card reader, among other card readers, and I don't have that plugged in right now because I only have one USB cable connector on the motherboard. So if I want to use this, I have to open the side of the case and just swap it with these. But for now, it's fine. Underneath that is the floppy disk drive, which isn't connected to anything because I don't have floppy disks, and really there's no reason for me to use it. However, the floppy disk power cable from the power supply is plugged into the fans where the fans are supposed to go, and it's able to supply 12 volts to the fans, and so every time I turn the PC on, they just come on with the rest of the fans, even though they're not wired together. So that's pretty cool. Real quick, before I put the side panel back on, let's just go over the components. First off, we've got an 800 watt power supply from EVGA. It's non-modular. Then we have a DVD drive. Underneath that, we've got the two fans that are wired together, and between them, we have a USB 2.0 and audio jack hub. Got two of those ports. Underneath that, we've got our Silicon Power 1 terabyte SSD. And then underneath that, we have the floppy drive, which isn't in use. And then underneath that, we have the 1 terabyte HDD. And under that, we have just another one of the fans that's wired together with the back fan over here. Next to that, we have the GeForce GTX 1060 from NVIDIA, another EVGA manufactured product. Above that, we've got our Intel CPU. It's an Intel Core i3-12100F, so that's why there's a graphics card here. And then we've got the RAM. We've got 32 gigs of Silicon Power. The speed is 3200 megahertz. Also, the SD card reader and PCIe card with USB 3.0 ports on it. And of course, the motherboard, the MSI Pro H610M-G. And I know that some of you fans are dying to know what it looks like on the inside when it's powered on, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and hit the power button. As you can see, it's not very exciting. I mean, we didn't really need any RGB since this is a sleeper build. But yeah, see all the fans are working here. You can go ahead and go to the front. Those are spinning, and then we've got the one down here. So we should be at pretty good temperatures, but just to make sure, I will show you guys what the internal temps look like here in a second. Real quick, I'm just going to show off my PS2 enabled keyboard for that old aesthetic. Nice and clicky, as you would expect. It's a compact brain. Came with one of the other PCs we have here. And the mouse is just the standard laser mouse. It's USB. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, temperatures. So on idle, I've just been letting the PC sit for a little while. Our temperatures for the CPU are on top, and looks like they're averaging around 50 degrees Celsius. And the highest they got was 56. And then if we go down, our GPU is currently sitting around 38 degrees Celsius, and then the highest it's gone is 40 from what we can see on this chart right here. And yeah, now we're going to move into the games. After a little bit of Warzone 2, my CPU temperatures were averaging around 60 degrees and would go all the way up to 74, only in certain conditions. And the GPU's temperatures were around 60, mid-60s to upper 70s. Highest it got was 77 in my test. Next, we're going to be checking out Fortnite. Alright, after playing a little bit of Fortnite, we've got our temperatures right here. As you can see, we got around 60 degrees Celsius average for the CPU temperatures, and then all the way up to 76, surprisingly, when compared to Warzone 2. And then our GPU is looking like it might also be a little bit hotter playing Fortnite. Without further ado, let's go on to our next game, which is going to be PUBG. And after playing a little bit of PUBG, our CPU temperatures went from Fortnite's 75 to 76 max to 79 in PUBG on like lower settings, lower to medium settings, and then our average was around 70. And then our GPU was around 80, and then it went up to 82, so not a huge fluctuation. If you guys have any other games you want tested with this exact configuration, go ahead and let me know, and I will get back to you with what these specs are. It's important to note that most of these games were run on medium to low settings. These are budget components, which is why I had those settings set specifically for the games. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.